Next up, as temperatures fall and COVID cases rise, city leaders are scrambling to secure housing for the estimated 1,500 plus people experiencing homelessness in Boston. Just this week, Mayor Michelle Wu promised to remove encampments at that area known as Mass and Cass for good by winter. But of course, that means people need a place to go. The mayor's proposed a controversial plan that would turn a nearby defunct hotel into temporary housing and a medical clinic. More immediately, New England's largest shelter, the Pine Street Inn, has been doing extra outreach in recent days to make sure anyone who wants a place to stay can get one. They and several other nonprofits are collaborating with the Boston Public Health Commission to offer more than 1,000 emergency shelter beds in all. And just yesterday, there was a groundbreaking on a project in the Back Bay that will include more than 100 supportive housing units for people who've been homeless in partnership with the Pine Street Inn. And then there's that $15 million donation from the Yawkey Foundation that Pine Street announced last week. Joined now by the president and executive director of the Pine Street Inn, Lyndia Downey. Lyndia, it's good to see you.
You too.
So how big a deal, actually that is a stupid question. I was about to ask how big a deal is $15 million. I retract that question. What are you going to do with the $15 million? I know it's your biggest contribution ever.
Well, it is, as you said, Jim, the biggest gift we've ever gotten, and we are going to use it to help us acquire more supportive housing. So it's forward-thinking support, and we will use the money to close the gap on what I call the support in supportive housing, which is really the case managers and the staff to help people stabilize in housing, get on with their lives. And there's always a gap. State funding covers a portion of it, but it never covers the entire cost, and it slows us down, frankly, when we're trying to find housing sites.
Can you explain what supportive housing is for those who don't know the term?
Supportive housing is typically affordable housing that has some on-site support staff, and it's often targeted to people who are homeless the longest as a way to get them out of shelter, off the streets, and frankly, to get people a stable place from which to rebuild their lives.
And how often I don't know what the term is it retention rate, I think? How often does it work and how often does it not? Meaning, obviously, and that's why you have the supports, the transition from being homeless in some cases for a long period of time to having the luxury, for lack of a better expression, of being able to close your door and have your own place must be immense.
It is I would say the first year that people move in and often the first 6 months, Jim, are really hard. It's a whole different life for people where, you know, they're going to have more independence. They're going to have to learn how to literally cook for themselves if they've been staying in shelter, or do their laundry and you know, deal with all the issues that led to their homelessness. We typically have a retention rate from 1 year to the next above 90%.
Really?
It means if we housed you, you know, today, a year from now, you're still housed. It doesn't work for everybody. There's people for whom even that doesn't work. But we feel for 9% of the folks we work with, we can successfully house them in supportive housing with the right support, which is why this Yawkey money matters so much.
Obviously, the Yawkey Foundation has done some great things, but as you know, as a Bostonian, the Yawkey name itself has been somewhat tarnished. Last team in the major leagues when Tom Yawkey owned it to have a black player, didn't sign Jackie Robinson after he tried out, and most recently the current ownership led by John Henry changed the name of Yawkey Way because of this history of racism. Did any of that give you pause? I know the Yawkey Foundation has also been a donor in the past. Any of that give you pause, Lyndia?
You know, Jim, the foundation has been a donor to Pine Street for over 30 years now. They've been a longtime partner at lots of different phases. In our early days with shelter, as we moved into housing, they've supported that. They've certainly supported some capital work we've done over the years in our various buildings. And listen, they've supported, I don't think there's a charity in town, frankly, that they haven't been longtime donors to. And I think you have to look at, where is this foundation putting its dollars now, and what are they funding? They're funding places like us where, you know, when this housing is built, we estimate half the people will be people of color who will benefit from this housing. You know, they've made a very generous gift to King Boston. Bridge Over Troubled Waters, who we work closely with on younger homeless folks. You know, you look at the staff there and the diversity of their board and the expertise they have on that board. And I think they are making real impact in the city and working very hard to be strategic about their impact along the social equity lines.
Yeah, they may not like this term, but when I hear you describe it that way, it almost sounds to me, particularly with the size of the donation, almost as a form of reparations. But we can move on from that. Mass and Cass, is Michelle Wu, who I know has been on the job literally a minute or two, is her approach to solving that problem and stepping back the larger problem that signifies, is that on the right track in your estimation, Linda?
I think that the mayor has said, and I think, you know, last time you and I talked, I think I said this, everything should be on the table. People down there have a very complex set of issues, everything from addiction to healthcare to lack of housing and lots of things even in between that. And I think the mayor is trying to put on the table every possible solution. Some are close by, the Roundhouse in particular. There is some, as you know, some new activity on the Shattuck campus with the smaller huts that will be up in a couple of weeks. We're going to shift some of what we're doing on the Shattuck campus to be even lower barrier than we are now. So I do think she's looking at a multitude of options, and even that may not be enough, frankly. I think this is going to be difficult.
You know, I'm sure you've read the same stories I have, where some people who were at Mass and Cass, when it's suggested that the Pine Street Inn might be an alternative, at least as an interim, have said, no, the shelter is not where I want to be with what they perceive to be the restrictions. What do you say to them, Linda?
Listen, shelter's not for everybody, Jim. I think, you know, there are some rules. Boston, interestingly enough, we have quite low barrier shelters, right? You don't have to be sober. You can't use in the building, but you don't have to show up sober. You don't have to be clean. You don't have to be on medication. You know, go downstairs tonight and you'll see that there's plenty of people in various states staying in shelter. But there are some, you're right, once you claim your bed, you can't come and go all night. And if you're actively using, and this new class of drugs like fentanyl and meth, fentanyl in particular, you really have to use on a regular basis, which means probably every hour you got to get high. And that's hard to manage in shelter. And that is part of the reason people are outside. And it is part of the reason the mayor's talking about some alternatives to shelter. And we need a bit of everything on this.
You know, before you go, if we can go back to where we began, virtually every elected official, particularly local officials, comes in office saying they're going to end homelessness in their term of office. You, a couple of years ago, made it quite clear that this constructing supportive housing was the primary mission of Pine Street Inn. Even if we never get to the point we'd all like to get where it's eliminated, is that the path to the promised land, for lack of a better expression? Is it building supportive housing?
I think it's one of the strategies, right? For a lot of people, Jim, shelter really is a very short term. You know, we have probably 70% of the folks we see are gone within a month. They just need a little bit of help, right? Something bad has happened and we need to get them over that hump. For people that are stuck in homelessness, that'll never get into the market, that need support, they're mentally ill, they've got substance use, they've got serious health, and often all those things, we have not invested enough in supportive housing for that group. They're not going to get out of homelessness otherwise. That's the group that drives the bigger numbers, ironically. Even though it's a small group, they stay in shelter for years and years and live on the street, by the way, for many years. And when we closed down state hospitals and when we pulled back on long-term substance abuse treatment, the result of that has been a group that's stuck in homelessness, and supportive housing is the answer to that.
Linda, all of us are lucky to have you and your colleagues. Thanks for your work, and thanks so much, as always, for your time tonight.
Thanks, Jim.